Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. We're going to dive into a very important and often overlooked topic, understanding childhood trauma and its lasting impact. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore the causes of childhood trauma, how it affects individuals over time, and discuss effective interventions. This is a crucial conversation about a hidden mental health crisis that affects many lives, and I'm looking forward to sharing insights with you. Let's begin. Childhood trauma and stress represent a widespread but often overlooked threat to mental health and development. In fact, nearly 1 in 4 young people report experiencing major trauma before turning 16. The effects can be profound, leading to conditions such as anxiety, depression, and even eating disorders. This issue is sometimes called the hidden epidemic because it disrupts healthy development in ways that can last a lifetime. Traumatic experiences can take many forms, including abuse, neglect, medical trauma, natural disasters, and violence. Even stressful events like parental separation or bullying, though less severe, still significantly impact a child's well-being. With growing awareness of this urgent issue, it's clear we need focused attention to better identify, understand, and address the effects of childhood trauma and stress. When we look at the roots of trauma, it's important to understand the historical and family context. For a long time, children were legally seen as property, which meant they had little protection from abuse. A turning point came with the 1874 case of Mary Ellen, a young girl who suffered severe neglect and abuse. This heartbreaking case led to the creation of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children and started to shift society's perspective on child protection. Family dynamics played a big role in allowing mistreatment to continue, especially with traditions that emphasized authority and privacy, often keeping abuse hidden. Over time, cultural and legal standards evolved, gradually recognizing children's rights and their vulnerability. Still, the family remains central in shaping trauma. Factors like parental stress, harsh parenting practices, and cultural acceptance of corporal punishment deeply affect the occurrence and impact of maltreatment. Although we've made significant progress, the legacy of these historical attitudes still challenges our ability to fully protect children within family systems today. Understanding these roots helps us grasp why trauma persists and the importance of continuing efforts to safeguard children. When we talk about traumatic events, we're referring to experiences that involve actual or threatened death, serious injury, or harm. This includes things like physical or sexual abuse, neglect, disasters, and violence. These are extreme and uncommon stressors that can completely overwhelm a person's ability to cope. Because of their intensity and the lasting impact they can have, traumatic events require special attention and care. On the other hand, stressful events happen more often and tend to be less severe. Examples include things like parental separation, moving to a new school, or peer conflicts such as bullying. While these experiences can affect psychological adjustment and may cause distress, they are often part of normal development and can usually be managed more effectively compared to trauma. Understanding this difference is crucial for addressing each appropriately. When we talk about child maltreatment, it's important to understand the different types and how deeply they can affect a child's life. First, physical abuse involves acts of aggression that cause physical harm, such as beating or burning. It leaves visible scars but also hidden trauma. Then there's neglect, which is actually the most common form. This happens when a child's basic needs, whether physical, educational, or emotional, are not met, stunting their growth in multiple ways. Sexual abuse is another devastating form, involving exploitation through fondling, intercourse, incest, or coercion. It deeply damages a child's sense of safety and trust. Psychological abuse might be less obvious but equally harmful, consisting of repeated verbal threats, belittling, or even confinement that seriously impacts mental health. Often, these forms of maltreatment don't occur in isolation. They overlap, creating a complex mix that can lead to developmental delays, emotional distress, and behavioral issues. Importantly, child maltreatment affects children across all backgrounds and profoundly disrupts their ability to form secure attachments, develop trust, and grow socially and emotionally in a healthy way. Understanding these impacts is crucial to addressing and preventing harm effectively. Here we have several powerful case studies that shed light on the real impact of childhood abuse and neglect. First, Mary Ellen's story is significant because her suffering in the 19th century actually led to the creation of legal protections for children, marking a turning point in how society addresses child welfare. Then there's Milton, whose experience with physical abuse clearly demonstrates how harsh punishment at home can lead to aggressive behavior in children. Rosita's case highlights the deeply complex emotional and behavioral issues that can arise from sexual abuse, including self-harm, showing just how damaging these experiences can be internally. Finally, Brenda's story reminds us of the difficult cycle of trauma, where past abuse affects her own parenting, illustrating the long-term challenges that can persist across generations. Together, these narratives emphasize why understanding and interrupting these patterns is so critical. The DSM-5 groups trauma-related disorders into their own distinct category, recognizing how crucial it is to address the impact of traumatic experiences. One of these disorders is reactive attachment disorder, or RAD, which is characterized by emotionally withdrawn behavior toward caregivers, indicating a disruption in forming healthy attachments. Another is disinhibited social engagement disorder, or DSED, where individuals show overly familiar behavior with strangers, reflecting difficulties in social boundaries. Then we have post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, which involves ongoing anxiety and distress after experiencing trauma. Acute stress disorder shares many of the same symptoms but is shorter in duration, lasting less than 1 month. Lastly, adjustment disorder is marked by an excessive response to common stressors that leads to significant problems in daily functioning. Understanding these distinctions is essential for accurate diagnosis and effective treatment. Reactive attachment disorder, or RAD, is primarily marked by a child's inhibited and emotionally withdrawn behavior. These children often do not seek comfort from caregivers when they're upset and may show little positive emotion. You might also notice unexplained irritability in these kids, which can be quite distressing. On the other hand, disinhibited social engagement disorder, or DSED, looks quite different. Children with DSED exhibit overly familiar behavior with strangers. They don't show the usual caution or reticence you'd expect and may engage in inappropriate physical contact. Both RAD and DSED stem from inadequate caregiving, but DSED tends to last longer and is more closely linked to later behavioral problems. In contrast, RAD often shows improvement with consistent, safe caregiving environments. Understanding these differences is crucial for effective intervention. When it comes to recognizing PTSD in children, there are several key signs to watch for. First, intrusion symptoms like distressing memories, nightmares, or flashbacks can be very common. These experiences often disrupt a child's sense of safety. Another important aspect is avoidance behavior, where children may try to steer clear of anything that reminds them of the traumatic event. This could mean avoiding certain places, people, or activities. We also see negative changes in how children think and feel. They might blame themselves, feel intense fear or shame, or lose interest in things they once enjoyed. Finally, arousal and reactivity symptoms can manifest as frequent anger outbursts, heightened alertness, sleep difficulties, and trouble focusing. Recognizing these signs is crucial for providing the right support and intervention. Trauma often arises from a complex mix of factors, especially within family and cultural contexts. Family stress plays a significant role. Things like poverty, unemployment, ongoing marital conflicts, and social isolation can push families into high-risk situations where maltreatment is more likely. Additionally, many parents who are abusive have their own difficult histories. They may have experienced abuse themselves, lack knowledge about healthy child-rearing practices, or struggle with personality disorders that affect their behavior. On top of that, cultural norms can sometimes unintentionally enable mistreatment. For example, societies that accept corporal punishment as normal or place a strong emphasis on keeping family matters private can make it harder to identify and intervene in abusive situations. Lastly, when it comes to sexual abuse, it's important to understand it's often a deliberate, premeditated act. Perpetrators typically use grooming and manipulation, exploiting the trust established within close relationships, which makes this form of abuse particularly insidious. Childhood trauma leaves a lasting mark on the brain by causing neurobiological changes that disrupt normal development and function. Key areas such as the hippocampus, which is essential for memory, the amygdala, which processes emotions, and the prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions, all show altered structure and activity. One critical system affected is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis, which regulates our stress response. Trauma can dysregulate this system, leading to abnormal cortisol levels and heightened stress sensitivity. Over time, chronic stress creates something called allostatic load, essentially the wear and tear on our biological systems, making it harder to regulate emotions effectively. Altogether, these changes increase the risk for behavioral disorders like PTSD, difficulties with self-regulation, hypervigilance, and other maladaptive behaviors that often continue well into adulthood. When it comes to breaking the cycle of trauma and stress, it's essential to focus on both children and their families. Effective treatment doesn't just address the child's needs, but also works to interrupt the cycle by supporting the entire family unit. One key approach is parent training, which helps caregivers develop better child-rearing skills and reduces the use of harsh discipline methods. Another important tool is psychological first aid, or PFA, which provides immediate emotional support to children following traumatic events. Additionally, home visitation programs play a crucial role by offering early resources, education, and ongoing support to families who are at risk. Overall, these interventions aim to foster positive parent-child interactions, equip families with coping strategies, and address the underlying factors that can lead to abuse and neglect, helping to create a safer, healthier environment for children to grow up in. Trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or TFCBT, is a highly effective treatment designed specifically for children who are dealing with emotional or behavioral challenges related to trauma. What makes TFCBT unique is that it blends several therapeutic approaches, cognitive behavioral techniques, attachment theory, and family therapy into one comprehensive treatment plan. A key part of TFCBT is the practice model, which guides the therapy process. This model includes several important components: psychoeducation to help children and their families understand trauma, parenting skills to support healthy family dynamics, relaxation training to manage stress, affect regulation to handle intense emotions, and cognitive coping strategies to change unhelpful thought patterns. One of the major benefits of this therapy is that it helps children develop a clear and coherent narrative about their trauma, which is essential for processing their experiences. Additionally, TFCBT not only reduces symptoms like anxiety and depression, but also strengthens resilience, enabling children to better navigate future challenges. Prevention and early intervention are crucial in reducing child maltreatment and lessening its long-term impacts. One key approach is promoting healthy parent-child relationships right from infancy, which lays a strong foundation for a child's emotional and social well-being. Another effective strategy involves home visitation programs specifically designed for high-risk families, offering support and guidance in a familiar environment. Beyond individual efforts, community awareness and policy initiatives play an essential role by mandating reporting and enhancing protections for children. Importantly, timely intervention doesn't just stop maltreatment. It also improves parenting skills and helps create safe, nurturing environments that encourage positive development and healing for children. To sum up, childhood trauma is a widespread but often invisible problem that has significant and lasting effects on mental health. It's important to understand that trauma is not just everyday stress. It usually involves severe adversity like abuse or neglect. The DSM-5 helps us identify trauma-related disorders such as reactive attachment disorder, disinhibited social engagement disorder, and PTSD, each with unique symptoms. The risk and impact of trauma are heavily influenced by family dynamics, cultural context, and socioeconomic status. On a developmental level, trauma can alter brain growth, making it harder for individuals to regulate emotions and develop a stable sense of self. Fortunately, early intervention with evidence-based approaches like trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy and parent training can foster recovery and resilience. Ultimately, prevention and a strong societal commitment are crucial if we want to reduce the ongoing burden of childhood trauma.